I just had a follower, we're going to call him William, tell me that I was garbage and that he was no longer going to follow me and then block me. I have absolutely no problem with that, but the downside is that I can't respond to his comments because the topic that we got into a disagreement about is really important. Earlier this week, I made a video debunking common resume myths and how to optimize your resume, which is essentially just focus on 4 sections: your information, professional experience, skills, and education. As a reminder, all of my experience is solely within corporate America, so if that is not the best practice for your industry or sector, that's totally understandable. This is also not universal. It is best practice. There's always going to be some exceptions. So then William responded and said, oh, I actually don't agree. I like seeing hobbies and interests and volunteer work in my candidates. If all things are equal and I have one candidate that has volunteer work, that's the person that's going to be picked. If someone doesn't have volunteer work or doesn't have hobbies, I think they're a cold fish. And I was like, okay, no offense to you as a person, but what you're doing is admitting to bad management decisions. Which I don't know why, but he took very offensively. But let me use this video to explain why for any manager that thinks in this way. When we talk about interviewing, when we talk about candidate selection, we consistently reinforce to managers that the choice has to be on the person that has demonstrated the skills, capabilities, and aptitude to do the job most. Now, managers can make a decision on whether or not they want someone who is experienced enough that has done that at previous other companies, or in certain cases where someone is demonstrating the right potential to be able to do it. But we in HR can put managers through the ringer of consistently asking questions and looking at their methodology as it relates to selection to try to make sure that we are free from bias. The problem is bias and discrimination happens all the time, and it's just swept under the term culture. When I really push and ask people to focus and describe on what they specifically mean by culture, I find that a lot of managers can't really describe it. Now, there are certain cases where a good culture fit is important, but you have to be able to articulate it. So as a perfect example, if a team has a specific culture where they're very, very honest and very candid with feedback on time to each other, then hiring someone who is not going to do well in that circumstance may not be a great culture fit. But someone doing volunteer work or someone having hobbies, or William had mentioned in another case being a polyglot, speaking more than one language, if they're not directly related to the person's ability to do the job, they cannot be a consideration. So not only is something like having volunteer work a very unrelated element to the job in most cases, but the fact that just someone puts it on their resume is not a good indicator, because you could have someone that does volunteer work but didn't put it on their resume. It's also extraordinarily privileged that in many cases that you would kind of take a moral high ground and say, I only want people on the team who do volunteer work, because many people would love to but don't have the financial means or times to do so. The best thing to do if you have a number of candidates after the final interview where all things are equal and you need a tiebreaker, it's not thank you notes, it's not extracurriculars, not volunteer work, it's to send them a business question and ask each one how they would respond to it. And never get caught online referring to candidates as cold fish. Bye, William.